In this video, we take a look at the top 5 features coming your way in SAP Analytics Cloud. These include Asymmetric Reporting, Composite Versioning, inclusion of data export API jobs in the Job Monitor, Data Panel, and Reset and Favorites in Open and Save dialogs. Hi, my name is Orla Cullen, and these are your What's New updates for QRC2 2026. In this release, we are excited to introduce a powerful new capability called Asymmetric Reporting. In real-world planning and financial reporting, business users need flexibility, different views, different levels of detail, and meaningful comparisons all in one place. Now let's see it in action. In this demo, we've built a rolling forecast table where accounts are displayed in the rows. On the columns, we show actuals from January to April, and the rest of the year as a forecast. We also include a full year actuals plus forecast view across the entire year. Alongside this, we present the full year budget aggregated at the quarterly level, and finally we calculate the delta, showing the difference between budget and actuals plus forecast. Now let's see how the 3 innovations work together. The first innovation, measure input control and restricted measures and cross calculations, allow us to expose 3 input controls: current date, forecast version, and currency measure. These dynamically drive the table. For example, current date lets us adjust the cutoff date from April to July. The second innovation, dynamic time filters for rest of period, ensures that when selecting July 2025, actuals automatically display from January to July. In addition, the other input controls let users switch the forecast versions or the currency in real time. Finally, visibility filters for table widgets control what is displayed: months for actuals and forecasts, and quarter for the full year budget. If I select the table and open the Builder panel on the right, you can see that we are using restricted measures for the columns. Let's edit the first 2 restricted measures. The actuals measure uses the currency input control as a dynamic measure, which is our first innovation. For this time range, it is set to dynamic, using the current date input control as the anchor. The second innovation, include range up to period, then automatically determines the cutoff date. The same logic applies to the rest of the year forecast measure. It also uses the currency input control as a dynamic measure, and along with the forecast version input control to dynamically select the version. For the time range, it is again dynamic, based on the current date, and it uses the rest of current period and start from next period options to define the forecast horizon. In this case, from the month after the cutoff date to the end of the period. Finally, the third innovation, visibility filters for table widgets, must be enabled on the measure structure to allow an asymmetric layout. It is then confined for each restricted measure. For example, the actuals measure uses visibility filters on the time dimension to display only monthly members. The same applies for the rest of year forecast. However, for the full year budget measure, which displays yearly and quarterly data, the visibility filter is set to year and calendar quarter levels. For full year actuals plus forecast, which displays only the totals for the period, we only select totals in the visibility filter. When used together, these innovations enable true asymmetric reporting and allow you to build a fully dynamic rolling forecast table. Next up, we are now adding versioning support for composite artifacts. This will allow composite designers to manage up to 10 versions of each composite. Here we see the composite in design time, and I've defined this composite as a tile. I open version management and I save a version. I call it original version and I save it. Now in version history, it appears as original version. Now I'm going to modify the composite. For example, I would like to change the time period on the chart from Q1 2024 to Q2 2025. And I click on Set. Again, I save it as a new version, and it is now the current version or active version, and this will be the one that will be used in the story. I go back to my story that is using the composite and I select Refresh. The reloaded story now reflects the active composite version I just modified with the new time frame from Q1 2024 to Q2 2025. I can also restore the original version. First I open the composite, I select the original version, and I can click on Restore. So the original version is restored, and we go back to our story and refresh. We can see the original version is now active. In this release, we add Data Export API and Delta calculation jobs into the Job Monitor. Data extraction jobs displayed in Job Monitor allow you to monitor the current status of your initial full load and data subscription jobs. Let's take a look. I open up the Job Monitor within the System folder of the navigation menu, and I can see the data extraction jobs. I disable the filter to see the running jobs in the API tab. In this example, we have no currently running jobs. We switch to our API client and we run a data extraction job. Here we export the fact table of a model, where we filter on the forecast version. Note that we extract 10,000 records per page size. We can refresh the job and see that the job is pending. And we can open up and further see details about this job, including the same extraction jobs that were configured in the API client and the number of records. If we switch back to the job, we can run an OData next link to generate the rest of the records to be extracted. Now we can see a second page containing the remainder of the records. Next, let's generate some data extraction jobs for additional artifacts, including a public dimension, a currency rate table, and a standard unit table. When we refresh Job Monitor, we see these jobs have completed successfully. We can select these jobs for further information such as duration and number of records that have been extracted. A new source column in Job Monitor allows navigation back to the source object. Note that the retention period of data extraction jobs is 7 days. Next, let's take a look at the introduction of Delta calculation jobs in Job Monitor. Again, we open up Job Monitor within the System folder of the navigation menu, and we select the Delta calculations option in the Data Export API tab. We create a subscription in a model to collect Delta changes. When we run this job for the first time, it creates an initial load containing all the fact data contents. Here's an example of the extraction. Now let's go to the model and make some changes to the fact data and publish this to persist the changes. This action activates a Delta calculation job, which runs to calculate the difference between the old and the new fact table values. We can now see the job in Job Monitor and see that this job has actually already completed successfully. We can select the job to obtain further information. In this quarter, we are excited to introduce the decoupled data panel, which can be accessed independently of the Builder panel and Styling panel. Now users will have a simplified right-hand toolbar for quick access to the Data panel, Builder panel, and the Styling panel. From the Stories tab, I create a story, and immediately I see Data panel available on the right-hand side of my new story. It provides a guided experience to the user on how to add data to the story using a model, a dataset, a data source, or a file. In this example, I choose Model. So from my favourites, I select a model, and once added, you can see that the objects of the model, such as measures, structures, calculations, and if available, location dimensions. From the Data panel, users can easily navigate to the modeler or data analyzer, which is then opened in a new tab. Previously, the user had to save the story first before navigating. We have also introduced the option to switch between description, ID, and ID and description directly from the Data panel itself. And we also allow the option to resize the Data panel. The Data panel also easily allows addition of additional models into the story. Here I'm going to add a new model. Again, it's from my favourites, and once added, I immediately see my new model and the related objects in the Data panel. Now let's see the Data panel in action in a story. Here I have a bar chart, and I want to add a measure and a dimension. First, I choose the measure head count, and when I drag the measure to the chart widget, the measure zone is activated and highlighted in blue. Next, I drag the dimension career level and can see that only the appropriate zones are highlighted in blue. So in this case, I can either add my dimension to color or dimensions. In this case, I choose dimensions. Also, if I want to change the underlying data model, all I have to do is select the data model, select the object which I want to add, gross margin account, and I load it into my chart. As soon as the new object has been added from a different model, we will be given a warning message saying that the data source is being reset, and we can accept and proceed. These are just some of the great advantages the new decoupled data panel brings this quarter. Tune in to our full feature video to see more. Last, but by no means least, with this release, users now can access recent and favourites directly within File, Open and Save dialogs. These tabs allow quick access to recently used or starred stories, models and folders, removing the need to navigate the file repository hierarchy. Here in our story, we want to select a dataset or a model. Very simple but very effective, we now have favourites and recents available to be selected from the View tab in our pop-up window. Thank you for joining us to learn about some of the top features coming in the Q2 2026 release cycle of SAP Analytics Cloud. Check out the video description for more links to resources about this quarter's update, and also remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all things SAP Analytics Cloud. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.